Well, let's put the spotlight then on India's space tech startup Digantara, which is going to actually be in the spotlight with mapping the testbed launch aboard Elon Musk's rocket. Joining in right now on the show, we have with us Anirudh Sharma, who's the co-founder and CEO at Digantara. Good to have you on board. Thanks so much for joining in. Congratulations. This is quite a feat. I understand that this is the second launch by an Indian startup on board a reusable Falcon 9 rocket. How exactly does it work? And I understand that the plan in the long term is sort of to create something akin to Google Maps for space.
Correct. Thank you for having me here, firstly. So we are building technologies for tracking objects in space. So basically, we have seen a growth in number of objects that are going up in space from one satellite in 1957, back when Russia launched Sputnik, to now 5,000 odd satellites in the orbit. So there is a golden rush to put satellite services up in space. So there is a requirement for us to build an infrastructure to support the space economy, which is why we are launching satellites to track other satellites and space debris in the orbit, not only just satellites, but also the orbital environment. And this launch that we are doing will cater towards tracking or understanding radiations in the orbit.
And it's been nothing short of a pretty record year, Anirudh, for the entire Indian space tech ecosystem. And I understand that it's expected to be as exciting going into as we're stepping into the new year. Just walk us through what the expectation is with respect to the implementation of the new India space policy that could open up the ecosystem even further, and how that could fuel growth for your company, Digantara.
We've seen tremendous change from the time we started. So we started this company back in 2018, just as students, where we were building satellite components and avionics, and we were serving it to a couple of our customers in the global market. So post that, we started working towards building a system for space situational awareness, and this itself is a domain which is niche in the space sector. And for such thing to happen, policy plays a very crucial role, be it in India or in the spacefaring nations in the Western countries. So policy will act as a very strong foundations for technologies to play out from the private industry. So we've been hearing about the change in the policy and the opening up of the government for the private space sector, and we are working towards building a policy also for space situational awareness with the government, and it is a very good response from the government that they're taking our inputs in building or shaping these policies.
I understand with the strong momentum then, Anirudh, that the industry as a whole is expecting something like $300 million in private capital investment. How much is it that your company has raised so far, and what are the fundraise plans in the new year?
So we have raised $2.5 million in our seed round, and now we're looking at raising our next series of investment, and which will cater towards building our infrastructure, launching 8 more satellites in the next 2 years. This will be our first satellite for 2023 that we are launching, and then the next satellite will go probably in the month of May or June of this year, where we'll be launching another satellite, and we are also working towards our next big fundraise.
Mm-hmm. So what's the year ahead looking like as well for the company, starting back to, you were talking about one of your first launches in the year 2008. What does the road ahead look like in terms of what the company has on its platter?
So currently, like I said, we are developing infrastructure for tracking of space objects, and this can be both ground-based and space-based. We recently announced the launch of an observatory in the northern state of Uttarakhand, where we are establishing a telescope to track objects in space in the geostationary orbit, and also launching satellites to track objects in the lower Earth orbit with space weather data, which makes it unique. Which makes it a very unique offering for the space sector, because when the industry is growing, it requires some sort of sense of what is happening in space. Like we've seen in the aviation sector, for any sector to grow, there needs an infrastructure. That is something that we'll be building for this year. And our first few launches will only act as a test bed for us to prove our technology and generate more data sets to make it much more accurate and calibrate this data to supply to our global customers in the demand that we already have.
How are you looking at competition and the emergence of new players? Because there are the likes of Skyroot Aerospace, Dhruva Space, etc.
So, one good thing about the Indian ecosystem or the space ecosystem itself is everyone can be complementary. And we've seen Skyroot launching their first rocket to space, Dhruva Space launching satellites. So it's all complementary at the end of the day. So we provide services to a segment where it can be used by all these players, from the rocket launch companies to satellite operators like Dhruva Space, Pixel. So it's more or less a complementary service that we are providing. And on the global competition, I would say that there are only a handful of companies doing space situational awareness at this point in time. And we are one of the leading companies and the only company in India working towards building a solution for space situational awareness.
So how much are you looking to invest in, and how are you looking to, further strengthen the SSA capabilities of the company? How much is the investment?
So at this point in time, we are expanding to a new facility, which is around 25,000 square feet. We're working towards setting up an indigenous mission control center to both support military and civilian space applications, to provide these data sets not just to commercial satellite operators or launch companies, but also to serve defense markets. So, and apart from the infrastructure that we're setting up in India for space situational awareness in terms of the telescopic observatory, we're also expanding our global infrastructure and setting up infrastructure in South Korea at this point in time, working towards building one such observatory also in South Korea, so that we build a global network of these ground-based and space-based sensors to complement these data sets. So over a period of 3 years, I would say we'll be working towards launching and we'll be working towards having around 30 to $40 million in investment towards space situational awareness infrastructure.
All right, Anirudh, we wish you all the very best. Thanks so much for taking time out and joining us on Startup Central.
Thank you so much for having me here.